Hey everyone, Coldon here with another VOX Immortalis commentary guide. This video is for Ragnaros, the final boss in Firelands, and this is 10-man. And up front, this video is about 70% of normal speed, just to provide adequate time to explain all the mechanics and everything that's happening, as this is a very lengthy fight and fairly complicated. So there are three primary phases to the Rag fight, based on Ragnaros' current health level, and then between those phases are some intermediary phases that sort of share common attributes each time they occur. So I will explain the unique mechanics for each phase as they occur, and then I'll go back once there's time and explain the common attributes and abilities that you have to deal with throughout the fight. So for the first phase, which is from 100% to 70% of Ragnaros' health, there's two unique abilities. The first is Magma Trap, and if you look in the top right of my character, there's a trap that's just landed. So this is cast on a random raid member, and it prefers ranged targets if available. And once it activates, any raid member that touches it will cause the trap to trigger, dealing about 80,000 fire damage to the entire raid, but also knocking that player really far up into the air vertically, such that they will need some form of fall damage mitigation or slow fall effect to not die. So in our case, we have our Discipline Priest on that duty. Basically, in addition to healing, as he normally would, he's in charge of triggering the traps. So when a trap is cast on a raid member, everyone steps away from it 10 or 15 yards. And then our priest will check the raid's health levels, and if everyone is full health or near it, he'll announce he's stepping into the trap. He'll do so and trigger that big AE damage. And this way, it's ensured that no one is in danger of dying to the damage. That said, as a healer, you really only need to concentrate on the tanks when those traps are triggered, because there's really not much additional damage throughout this first phase that other raid members should be taking besides the trap. The other unique mechanic to this phase is Rag will cast on a random range member again and knock them back about 10, maybe 15 yards at most, and also hit anyone within 6 yards of that player. So this combination with the trap is supposed to knock you randomly into a trap and be bad. But it's actually not that big a deal, because if a trap spawns near you, simply move away from it 10 or 15 yards and try not to stand within 6 yards of other players, and it's pretty simple to avoid. So we're approaching 70% and about to enter the first intermediary phase. So I'll hold off on explaining the rest of the stuff that's been happening in this first part, because it occurs later on. So we'll cover it then. So the two intermission phases occur at 70% and 40% health on Rag, and they basically share common traits. Rag will sink into the lava and stop attacking the raid directly, and he'll smash his hammer sulfurous down on one of three locations randomly, either the left, center, or the right. So here you can see he's smashing it in the center. He'll also spawn 8 Sons of Flame adds around the edge of the room. These will immediately start walking toward the hammer, and if they're allowed to reach melee range, they'll deal massive AE of around 120,000 damage. So obviously you want to prevent that. These Suns have a movement increase buff based on their health level above 50%. So every 5% health above 50% increases their movement speed. Therefore, the idea is to kill or control them enough so that they get below that 50% mark quickly, then move on to the next one. So I can't really give you an exact tactic because it's very dependent on your raid makeup, obviously. But generally you want to assign people ahead of time so they know 1 or 2 Suns that they're focusing on first, and to either DPS them down as a DPS or use CCs like stuns and knockbacks if not. And then once DPS finish with 1 or 2 Suns, they can move on to the next one, and so on. So utilize all the tools you have, because there's not a lot of stuff to do in that phase other than kill the Suns. So even healers and tanks, like paladin tanks and healers, have 2 really strong stuns for that. Warrior tanks as well. As a druid healer, I'm able to use my stuns. So anything you can do to basically buy yourself time. Once all the stuns are dead, you'll enter the next phase. So we're in phase 2 now. So Rag pops back up, and the new mechanic for this phase, or unique I should say, is Molten Seed. So you saw there, we were all kind of spread out to the left side of the room. And the reason you're spread is because when Molten Seeds are cast, they're cast on everyone in the raid. And they'll do a small AE around 6 yards to anyone near you. So try to be spread out a little bit. Once the seeds spawn, everyone should move away from them because they'll start a countdown to when they explode. And when the seeds explode, they do a big fire AE, but the damage from that AE is somewhat based on your distance from the seed. So the further you are away, the lower the damage you'll take. Thus, when the seeds were spawned on the left, everyone in the raid moves sort of to the right. And once the seeds explode, they'll spawn a set of adds, which you saw a moment ago. To deal with those, we just have everyone stack up on the tank position in melee. And this just forces the adds to bunch up, makes threat and healing easier, as well as AE DPS. So then you just burn them down with everyone. And once they're dead, spread back out and await the next seed cast. So it's pretty simple. There's a lot of damage going on here. So we tend to use our raid cooldowns either on the seed explosion itself or when the adds are about to approach us afterward, just depending on health levels and stuff. So you can see we've got the next set of seeds on the right, so everyone's moving to the left side now. And we'll bunch up here, and there's the explosion, and here come the little minions, and that's it. So this process just repeats during this phase. This is, as I said, the only unique mechanic for this part. So I'll cover a couple other things that are going on throughout the fight. The first thing that happens through all 3 main phases is with the tanks. So you'll need 2 tanks for this fight because Rag will stack a debuff on the current tank called Burning Wound. And this increases, or it's an increasing fire damage dot, around 5,000 per stack. And it also increases the damage the tank does by adding a fire attack to every melee sort of based attack they do. This also stacks in damage based on the Burning Wound count at the time. So theoretically, if you need extra threat or just more DPS, if you can heal it, you can have your tanks reach a higher Burning Wound stack before they switch off. And this will increase their damage output. That said, the Burning Wound doesn't last very long. It's like 20 seconds. So you can pretty much switch tanks every 3 or 4 stacks if you want and be fine. So yeah, we're doing seeds one more time. And I should mention there's 2 other effects that are occurring. The first one is going to happen in a moment here, I think. And this happens during the second phase and third phase. Rag will engulf a part of the room. There it is right there, engulfing flames. So he casts a big ring of fire in one of 3 locations randomly. So it can either be the center position, which is right where it is now. So that means that if you're in melee range or far back, you're safe. It can be front position where melee and tanks will be, or it can be the far back behind us. So it's important just to watch for that. The other effect that occurs throughout the fight is Sulphurous Smash, which he's using right there. So he'll tend to cast near a raid member, but he always does it about 10 yards out from him. And he'll have 3 little fire pools on the ground and then smash his hammer down. Those pools will then emit a flame wave out from them. So 2 to either side and 1 straight out. So you can kind of predict where that flame wave comes. And if you get hit by the wave, it does about 100,000 damage, and then it has a nasty magic dot as well. So the initial hit shouldn't kill anyone, but your healers have to be really quick to dispel that person so the dot doesn't kill them. So we've entered the next phase, which is the second of the 2 intermediary phases. And again, he'll smash his hammer down in one of the 3 locations and spawn 8 Sons of Flames like before. But in addition, on the second version, he'll spawn 2 new adds that are the Scions. and these have normal threat and need to be tanked by one of your tanks. They also will cast on a random raid member a debuff called Blazing Heat, which I had just a moment ago. And this leaves a trail of fire underneath the player wherever they move for a few seconds. And you've seen this sort of mechanic in mini fights before. But the key difference here is that if the Scion or any of the Sons of Flame step into this fire, they will be healed by 10% of their health. So that means that the basic strategy for us, at least, is to have anyone with Blazing Heat run out toward the far edge of the room and then curve around that edge. And this basically reduces the chance that the flame will be in the path of any of the adds. So once the Suns are dead and Rag comes back up, you'll still have the Scions on one of your tanks. So we choose to Bloodlust once Rag is active again to burn down the Scions quickly. The reason for this is because whatever tank is on Rag is still getting in their burning wound stack, obviously. So you want to make sure you have enough time that the new tank can finish off the Scions and then pick up Rag immediately. That said, obviously you can use cooldowns during that part as well if you need to. So we're into the final and third phase here. And again, this is 40%. So the new mechanic here is the Living Meteor, which you see casting on me. So the meteor will spawn kind of near the raid, and after it appears, it will pick a random raid member to fixate on. So you see an arrow and that line going to me. And the meteor will basically chase this player around the room, and the meteor is not very fast, so if you have any movement increase in a straight line race, you can outrun it pretty much infinitely. But because the room is not an infinite straight line, eventually it will catch you when you have to turn. So because of this, you have to knock the meteor away from you. To do this, you just use a direct damage attack on it. A ranged version attack, I should say. So anything that does damage up front, that's not a pure dot, will work. And once you attack it with a direct damage spell, it will knock itself back a few yards, and then it will quickly pick a new target to fixate and chase. So the general strategy is to cause the meteors to chase a person as long as possible so it's controlled, and then when they can't hold it any longer, they'll knock it away and have it switch to a new person. If a meteor reaches melee range of anyone, whether it's the fixated player or not, they will die. Generally, they also get knocked really far away off the platform, and thus they can't be battle-resed. So the difficulty with this phase is to control the paths of the meteors such that everyone else that's not being chased can still do their normal thing, DPS and heal and all that. So our strategy for this is to sort of center up in front of Rag here, and when a meteor picks a new target, that person runs backward, sort of toward the entrance of the room, and then by doing so, it forces the path of the meteor away from the raid, so it doesn't cross our path. And then once the meteor is safely off that path, then they can move away from it, whichever direction. So you can see here we've got a couple meteors out, and I'm knocking it away, and it's going to pick a new target. And then those targets, so you can see our Death Knight is picked by mine, and he's running out toward the entrance and then opposite the meteor. So this causes that path to be perfect, where it goes away from the raid that's basically in melee range of Rag at most times. Now throughout this phase, new meteors will continue to spawn. So this is sort of a soft enrage, where eventually you'll have so many meteors running around that it's difficult to avoid. So I think we get 4 before we finally get the kill. But really it just comes down to reaction and communication. And you'll see here I have 2 meteors target me at the same time, and I don't know if this is intended or a bug, but this means that I can't really, and the flame wave in the back. So, basically communication is key here. So I do announce to the raid that I'm knocking mine back to watch out for that, etc. Yeah, so it can get pretty hectic if you get engulfing flames or waves and a bunch of meteors and all that good stuff. But it's a cool fight. And this phase is definitely the hardest, I think, but once you get practiced, you shouldn't have much trouble. And that's normal reg. So good luck and thanks for watching.